My name is Maria, and you're listening to the podcast where we deconstruct someone's PhD experience so that you can reconstruct your own. This is a journey with many challenges, but you might find yourself in a similar situation as one of the guests here. Enjoy listening. Hello, curious people. This episode is inspired by one of the coaching sessions with a client, so a big shout out to her for bringing the topic of immunity in the session. Now, how is immunity connected to a PhD? This is what I will elaborate on in this episode, starting from our thinking and judgment process. Because our brains like to think in black and white. Either you are good at presenting or you suck at presenting. Either you are good at communicating with your supervisor or with your peers, or you're miserable at it. And it makes it easy. Black and white, good or bad, putting in boxes. Sounds easy, but in reality, it doesn't work like that. The truth is somewhere in between. The truth is that it is a non-linear process. At one point in time, you can be very good at it. At another point in time, you can be less good at it. Well, first of all, let's define what is good and what is bad. That is very individual. But the first thing is that you start from realizing that you want to be better or you want to be good, whatever that means in your terms. For example, in making presentations and delivering presentations of your work. And when you realize this, you do some step towards it. You make a presentation, you practice it in front of the mirror, you practice it in front of your peers, and finally you practice it on a conference. And let's say you go through this process one time, and you are satisfied with the result, and you have a sense of moving forward. And here is the catch. This is where our brain will think that now you have mastered the skill of presenting. Now you're very good at it. One experience shows that it's like that. Done deal. And also it can be that one experience can determine that you decided you are not good at something. Maybe in therapy, you will discover that when you were young, there was an experience that shaped you. And because of that, you think that you are very bad at presenting because people laughed at you when you spoke out loud, which is not true. Yes, your experience is true. Yes, what happened is there. But it doesn't mean that you are bad at it, and it doesn't mean that you are bad at it today. So let's challenge this thought that you suck at something or you have mastered something. Let's go back to this example of presenting, delivering presentations at a conference. One experience shows that you know the process, you know what it takes, and then you might get relaxed and say, oh, I have mastered it, so next time I'm going to be ready, right? Because now I'm the master. So you might do less to prepare for the second time. And the result might be less than you expected. You might end up beating yourself up because you thought that you are further than you actually are. And here is where immunity comes into play. Learning a skill is like building immunity. Learning to communicate is like building immunity. Learning to present is like building immunity. Learning to do research is like building immunity. It takes time. It takes working on it and putting conscious effort. And it depends on how the dice are rolled in the beginning as well. The other day in Zen meditation, we discussed that you increase your chances of success when you put a lot of effort, and you increase your chances 60%. 20% depends on the circumstances, and 20% is up to the faith, the God, the universe, call it how you want it. So let's look at immunity and draw this parallel. Some of us are born naturally and have a better immune system than people that are born with a C-section. And this is because we collected our mother's bacteria and everything that was needed to protect us from the very start we take our first breath. Likewise, some of you are born with a gift of communication skill, and some of you had a C-section that reduced this gift. Either way, you can build your immunity. That's not a problem at all, because immunity does not end here. And I'm not the expert in immunology, but I will reflect on it in basic terms. And all the immunologists out there can correct me where I'm mistaken. Immunity is built through a combination of factors. You can think of nutrition and exposure to others. Exposure to others who carry different organisms that we are used to dealing with. In your PhD, nutrition is your method of learning a skill. It is what you feed yourself in the process of learning a skill. What thoughts do you feed yourself while making a presentation? Do you feed yourself with critique that you are not good enough and look at where the others are? Or do you feed yourself with grace and patience while practicing in front of a mirror? Now, the other element, the critical element, is exposure to others while we are building immunity. If we live isolated, we will be adapted to the viruses that are circulating in this isolated environment. And the moment we enter a different environment, our immunity will be put to a test. In our world today, it's very rare that you are going to live very isolated unless you make a conscious choice to do that. But 99% of us are going to live in communities that are always changing, always interacting with each other. So there is a constant exchange and a constant exposure to different viruses, quote unquote, at work and real viruses out there. So what is important is also that we do not want to expose ourselves to the deadly viruses. This would be something at work that is totally out of your comfort zone. So this would kill your motivation. This would kill your desire to ever attempt something again. So immunity is best built bit by bit. This is the capacity that your body is capable of dealing with viruses. Also the capacity that your body is capable of dealing with stress at PhD and exposures to new experiences. In order to build immunity, it is important to expose ourselves to stress, but not to the point that it paralyzes us. So the exposure to new experiences is best digested bit by bit. It's also like eating. Even if something is good, we're not going to eat all of it because ultimately it's not going to be good for us. So the same thing with PhD and with making a presentation. You cannot do everything at once and then become a master. You are not capable of absorbing all of that at the same time. None of us is capable of absorbing everything at the same time or eating all the food, even though it's good. We're going to vomit. So this requires time. It requires practicing. Let's look at the example of chickenpox. Chickenpox is a virus that you go through normally when you are a kid. And some parents want to have their kids infected while young because young body deals with it better and faster. If you skip this when you're a kid and then get infected in your adult life, which happens to some people when they get kids and kids get infected in kindergarten and then bring it home, it will take much more time to recover and the infection phase is much heavier on the body. This is the same in the PhD. If you don't deal with learning to work in good terms with your supervisor, there will be another place after the PhD that will present the same challenge and might have higher stakes. It might be your future manager in another position. It might be your partner. It might be your kids. So the skills that you learn and develop during the PhD will serve you far more in all other areas of life than you might initially think. As a friend of mine says, you can change the environment, but you always carry the biggest factor everywhere. That is yourself. So you are the one that has the biggest power to build your own immunity. Yes, there are circumstances around it. And yes, there is fate, but you have 60% of what it takes to build that immunity. Now, if you realize that your immunity is low, that's not a problem at all. First, bravo for realizing where you are. Bravo for having the courage to make it conscious, because now you can do something about it. And if you recognize yourself in this story and want to build immunity together, I invite you to book a discovery call and have a chat about it. Looking forward to seeing you there. Thanks for listening to this podcast episode. If there was anything that you discovered or found remotely interesting, do share. I'm always curious to hear what is it that you resonated with. See you in the next episode.